Welcome to the first video in the series of New York State Coaches Safety Modules. I am your current Cheerleading State Rules Interpreter, Casey Cole. In this module, we will take a look at an introduction to New York State cheerleading safety. In Module 1, we will cover Safety Modules Objective and Philosophy, Safety Judges' Role and Responsibilities, Coaches' Safety Responsibilities, NFHS and NYSPHSAA Rules and Clarifications, New York State Safety Score Sheet and Deductions Worksheet, and the New York State Defined Deductions. Let's begin by taking a look at the safety module's objectives and the philosophy of safety judging. At the completion of this course, you will have an extensive understanding of the role and responsibilities of safety judges and coaches, the New York State Safety Score Sheets, the New York State Deductions, and the NFHS rule changes. The purpose of a safety judge is to alert coaches to violations their team is performing so it can be changed, with the ultimate goal of the participant's safety in mind. The intent of the NFHS rules is safety, not punishing teams with deductions. Next, let's take a look at the role and responsibilities of both safety judges and coaches. Safety judges are responsible for monitoring and citing New York State deductions, NFHS violations, and New York State routine requirements. Deductions are specific to the New York State defined deductions, such as out of bounds, falls, drops, etc. We will take a closer look at the New York State defined deductions later in this module. Violations are specific to the NFHS rules. Anytime a violation occurs, the panel judges must be alerted to this violation, as an illegal element can no longer be judged. Requirements include the 30-second minimum cheer time and the 2-minute and 30-second maximum routine time. Finally, it is also their responsibility to submit all safety violations to the state website. If a team is receiving the same violation over multiple competitions, your section cheer rep will be informing your athletic director that your team is consistently disregarding the NFHS rules. Now let's take a look at the responsibilities for a coach in terms of safety. It is your responsibility as a coach to read, know, and understand the information presented in the NFHS Spirit Rules book. Please understand that your liability insurance covers NFHS rules and not ACCA. Therefore, you must be aware of the rules at all times and make sure you are performing only NFHS legal skills. You are not allowed to practice ACCA legal and NFHS illegal skills for national competitions that follow ACCA rules. Also beware that stunts that you learn at camps or see on YouTube and social media are not always legal. If you are ever unsure about a rule, you should not be waiting for a safety judge to catch illegal skills at competitions. So you'll want to check with your local rules interpreter on anything you're not sure about. Please note that you also have many good resources on the NYSPHSAA website, including a link to the NYSJ Safety webpage, a link to cheerrules.org, and a link to the Georgia State cheerleading video rulings. All of these resources have many video examples of legal and illegal stunts. If you have any questions about the legality of a specific stunt, you can contact your local rules interpreter and submit a video. If you are not sure who your local rules interpreter is, please contact your cheer rep for contact information. If your local chapter does not have an assigned rules interpreter, questions should be sent directly to the state rules interpreter. My contact information can be found on the NYSJ Safety webpage under the Chain of Command section. In most cases, questions about legality should be accompanied by a video. It is the coach's responsibility to inquire about all safety violations and warnings given and to resolve the issue. It's important to note that video review in a competition is currently only approved at the state cheerleading championships. Video review during any other competition in New York State is not allowed. Safety judges' calls are final for that competition, and if a ruling is overturned when you submit your video, it does not change the outcome of the competition in which the violation was called. If you find any judge is reviewing videos at a competition and overturning rulings, please submit that judge's name to your cheer coordinator or contact me directly. Next, we will take a look at some important New York State and NFHS rules, as well as discuss some common misunderstandings. I first wanted to mention a couple of important items that we've seen over the last couple years to make sure everyone is aware. First, athletes cannot perform on two different teams at the same competition. For example, a participant cannot perform at a JV competition in the morning and then a varsity competition in the afternoon. Jewelry and hair rules must be followed at all times, including practices, games, competitions, and any other event where the athletes are representing the team and performing skills. At practices, games, and competitions, only team members may perform skills. You cannot have children or non-team members or alumni performing sidelines, skills, or routines. The only exception to this rule is pregame or halftime exhibitions that are approved specifically by your administration. Finally, mascots and costumes cannot perform stunting skills or tumbling skills except a forward roll or a cartwheel. I'd like to clarify some common misunderstandings. Let's start with bracer versus a post. A bracer is a flyer connected to another flyer. A post is a flyer connected to a participant on the ground. The pictures here are all examples of bracers because they show flyers connected to another flyer. This picture is an example of a post because the flyer is connected to a person on the performance surface. Next, let's talk about release versus non-release. A release occurs when the flyer loses contact with all participants on the performance surface. A braced release involves a flyer that stays in contact with another flyer but loses all contact with everyone on the performance surface. Let's take a look at a video example. This is an example of a non-release skill. Notice that the back spot grabs the flyer's foot before the switch occurs. This is a legal skill, but it's not a release skill. Next, let's discuss a flip versus a roll. Both of these skills involve the flyer performing hip overhead rotation, and you can see multiple examples of brace flips, suspended rolls, and brace rolls on the NYSPHSAA Safety webpage. Flip is a release skill where the flyer must have both hands or arms in contact with the hands or arms of a bracer. Each bracer must be in double base preps with a spotter. In a roll, it's a non-release skill where the flyer maintains contact with a person on the performance surface. Suspended rolls are going to fall under the rules of 336 in the NFHS rulebook. If a bracer is connected to the flyer on one side, it is considered a braced roll, and this would be rules 334 in the NFHS rules book. Let's take a look at some video examples. This is a braced flip to new catchers. This is a legal execution of this skill as it has bracers on either side of the flyer, each with a back spot, and the new catchers are not involved with any other skill when the flip is initiated. This is another example of a legal braced flip. In this version, the flyer has both hands in contact with the hands of a single bracer. This skill could also be performed without the bracer on the right side. Another variation would be to remove the bracer on the left side and have the flyer grab the hands of the bracer holding onto her waist. Here is an example of a braced roll. You can see the hand-to-hand contact with each of the flyers doing hip overhead rotation with someone on the ground. They should maintain this contact until the flyer is no longer inverted. As previously mentioned, release skills involve the flyer losing all contact with the performance surface. Examples of legal unbraced releases include tosses, which have to end in a cradle, switch-ups, which begin with one foot in a load, prep level or above releases to any level in which the flyer remains vertical, and a cradle or horizontal position at prep level can be released to a load or a stunt prep level or below. You can find many examples of release skills on the NYSPHSAA website. Let's take a look at a couple video examples. Here is an example of a variation switch-up. Please note the level at which the release occurs does not matter. What matters is the flyer started with one foot in a load. Here is an example of the 355B1 exception. The flyer must be at prep level or higher before the release and remain in a vertical position for the release to be legal. In this example, note that this skill is considered a release skill, not a dismount, because it does not meet the definition of a cradle. In a cradle, the flyer must be in a pike position. By holding their leg in the air, the flyers are not in a pike position. Therefore, this is an illegal release, 351, because it does not start at prep level before the release occurs. Also, the flyer does not remain vertical for the release. This is also an illegal release as the flyer starts below prep level before the release occurs. The flyer must start at prep level before the release takes place to be legal. Finally, let's review the New York State deductions and safety score sheets in detail. The top section of the deduction score sheet is for NFHS violations with the exception of out of bounds, which is a New York State defined deduction. It was included in this section because it also has a 0.5 deduction value. 0.5 violations are given for all parts of Rule 2 and Rule 3, Section 1. 5-point violations are given for all of Rule 3, Sections 2 through 9, and Section 10 is not included as props as bases is not illegal in New York State. When giving a warning, the safety judge will note a W after the rule citation. Anytime a warning or violation is given, safety judges are required to give you details in the warning infraction box about that violation. Here's the rule citation format. It first begins with the rule, the second part represents the section, and the third part represents the article, and if there's any sub-articles, they would be represented in parentheses. So for example, 2-1-7 is Rule 2, Section 1, Article 7. Another example, 336C2 is Rule 3, Section 3, Article 6, Subarticle C2. The bottom half of the score sheet is for the New York State defined deductions. Falls and drops are separated into tumbling and stunting. In the last section, the time of the routine will always be noted. If a technical error occurred with the music, a TE will be noted just outside of the time box along with the number of seconds recorded for that technical error. Please understand that the time of the routine will always be noted with the technical error time already subtracted. If a technical error with music occurs right at the very beginning of a routine, the judge will restart their timer and a technical error will not be noted. The cheer time will also be noted. If the time is less than 30 seconds, a 5-point deduction will be assessed. If the overall time of the routine is over 2 minutes and 30 seconds, a 2-point deduction will be assessed. Next, let's take a look at the New York State defined deductions. Out of bounds is a 0.5 deduction and will be assessed per occurrence for an athlete that makes contact with one or both feet outside the competition performance mat. Please note that an entire foot must fall outside of the mat. It wouldn't just be a heel that goes off the mat. A drop is a 1.5 deduction. This is an individual, stunt, pyramid, or toss that falls to the performance surface. Top person or multiple bases or spotters land on the performance surface. Please note that when we're referring to a flyer hitting the ground for a drop deduction, we're talking about a body part forcefully hitting the ground. For example, a flyer cradles and she's unable to keep her legs up, so they gently touch the ground as she cradles, versus a flyer that cradles and her legs forcefully hit the ground. The second scenario should only be assessed as a drop. Drop should also not be included as a brush of the hand on the floor during the dismount. A drop involves a body part of the flyers forcefully hitting the ground. A fall is a 1-point deduction, an individual stunt or pyramid that clearly comes down to a cradle or dismounts early. This includes a base or spotter dropping to the floor during a cradle or a dismount. A bobble is a 0.25 deduction. This involves stunts and pyramids that almost fall but are saved. This includes excessive correction or movement by the bases. Knee or hand of a base touching the ground during a cradle or a dismount. A pyramid collapse is a 4-point deduction. This involves connected stunt groups in a pyramid that fall to the performance surface. Top person or multiple bases from a stunt group land on the performance surface. When multiple deductions should be assessed during a pyramid, then the sum of those deductions will not be greater than 4.0. Please note the essential element in this definition is multiple drops occurring in a pyramid sequence, meaning multiple top people or multiple bases hit the floor. Also note that if multiple falls within a pyramid sequence would result in a deduction greater than 4 points, only a single pyramid collapse would be assessed instead. A tumbling drop is a 1.5 deduction. This involves an individual's torso, head, or neck coming in weight-bearing contact with the performance surface. The individual does not complete the skill. Please note that having completed the skill means the athlete must properly land the skill and stand upright. So if they're still bent over and have not stood up, they have not completed the skill. To illustrate, situation A, an athlete does a punch front, does not complete the rotation, and lands on their bottom. This would be a deduction. Situation B, a layout completes the landing, meaning they stand up straight and then fall to their bottom. This would not require a deduction. The skill has been completed. A tumbling fall is a 1-point deduction. This involves an individual's elbows and or knees coming in weight-bearing contact with the performance surface. The individual does not complete the skill. Please note the difference in body parts required to hit the ground is what qualifies them as either a drop or a fall. A tumbling touchdown is a 0.25 deduction where the individual's hands down in tumbling after completing an airborne skill. I want to emphasize the fact that touchdowns can only occur during airborne skills. Touchdowns cannot occur during a back handspring. Please also note that this does not involve a light touch of the hand on the ground. There has to actually be weight on the hands. This concludes our introduction to New York State cheerleading safety. If you have any questions about the content in this module, you can submit them to the questions link on the Q&A page on the NYSPHSAA website.